The movie opens with a girl swimming alone in the massive pool of her house. She's pretty and young, and she resides in a mansion on the rich side of town. The girl's name's Elizabeth. Across from her home, in the poor part of town, a boy named John is invited by his friend to go swimming in the bay. It's summer and everyone is enjoying their time away from school. John is a poor boy, the son of a single mother, and he resides in the projects with his mom, and it's there where he met his best friend and neighbor, Sluggo. JJ has a dream of becoming an actor, and to do that, he needs to be accepted at the art school. JJ likes to have fun with his childhood friends, but sometimes he gets into trouble because of them. They go to the bay and admire the rich side right across from them. It's a place they had never been to and it's completely out of their reality. An opportunity to cross the bay is presented when Sluggo decides to steal the boat from a rich man fishing. Though he's insecure about stealing the boat, JJ is also curious about the rich side, so he goes with Sluggo. They are amazed by what they see. There are a lot of people having fun diving, and there are also some bars that they didn't know existed. It's a whole new world for them, and they are enchanted. While watching the people diving, they see a man jumping over a little girl by accident and almost drowning her. JJ jumps into the water and goes after the girl, saving her. The girl's name is Patricia, and her father, Frank, is really grateful to JJ and Sluggo. Since JJ is soaking wet, Frank offers to take them to his house to lend JJ some dry clothes. Frank's house is a mansion. JJ and Sluggo are shocked by the opulence, and Sluggo starts making plans for the house. He watches Frank putting the password, memorizing it for a later time. Frank is Elizabeth's father, and when she appears to ask what is going on, she meets JJ. It's love at first sight. JJ can't stop staring at the serious blonde girl, and Elizabeth is also curious about him. Her father explains what happened to her sister and Elizabeth thanks him. When Frank takes JJ back home, he can't stop thinking about the blonde girl, and he wonders if he will see her again. As for Elizabeth, she doesn't have much time to think about JJ because her grandma, Victoria, is coming to spend some time with them. Victoria is Elizabeth's maternal grandmother, and after Elizabeth's mother passed away, she decided to get closer to her grandchildren. The problem is that Elizabeth resents her grandma for never caring about their mother when she was alive, and trying to mend things now that she passed. Frank tells Victoria he's going to sell the summer house, and she gets angry because it was her daughter's favorite house. Elizabeth is frustrated and annoyed by her grandma mingling and thinking she can have a say when it comes to their family, and she lashes out. Her grandma yells at her and Elizabeth goes to her room to be alone. She's tired and sad since her mother passed away. Her father barely stays at home, and Elizabeth has to take care of Patricia. There's no one to take care of her. She feels lonely and disconnected from her family, something that her busy father doesn't notice. Back to JJ, he's having lunch with his mother and her new boyfriend, Patrick. When he tells his mother about the acceptance letter arriving, Patrick laughs because he thinks going to art school is lame. JJ despises him, mainly because Patrick looks down on him and his mom constantly, but he can't force his mother to break up with him. Sluggo invites him to hang out and he has an excuse to leave the awkward lunch date. Sluggo wants to break into Elizabeth's house to steal. He knows they are in their summer house, so the house is empty. JJ can't believe his friends dragged him into that, but he can't leave them hanging. He's also curious about Elizabeth, and breaking into her house is going to help him get to know her better. He goes straight to her room while Sluggo and his other friends search for things to rob. Elizabeth's room is artsy and filled with pictures of her with her family and friends. JJ doesn't take anything. He only touches things and tries to understand who Elizabeth is. Unbeknownst to them, Frank and his family are coming back earlier after they argued with Victoria. The house is lit, and Frank orders Elizabeth to stay in the car with her sister so he can check it out. Meanwhile, Sluggo finds Frank's gun and steals it. When they realize there's someone at the house, they quickly run away without being seen by Frank. They manage to escape unscathed, but they have no idea that there are cameras in the house. The following day, JJ receives his acceptance letter and celebrates with his mother. It's a victory for him to be able to go to college and learn something that he loves. He's really excited about it. Days go by. Elizabeth is bored with her life. She feels as if she has no social life anymore, and all she does is take care of Patricia. It's driving her crazy. As for JJ, his friends start stealing more and his relationship with Patrick worsens. In his first class, JJ finds out that Elizabeth is in his classroom. He makes eye contact with her, waiting to see if she's going to recognize him from the day he went to her house. Elizabeth does, but she doesn't talk to him right away. They have to introduce themselves and Elizabeth doesn't make a good impression because she mocks one of her classmates. At the end of the class, JJ approaches her to introduce himself properly. Elizabeth thinks he's cute for coming to talk to her, especially when the other students had given her the cold shoulder. JJ is romantically interested in Elizabeth, but he has no idea how to ask her out, given that they are from different worlds. When he goes home with another classmate, he asks about Elizabeth and finds out that she's morose because her mother recently passed away. It explains why Elizabeth seems so closed off and aloof most of the time. JJ sympathizes with her and decides to become her friend and maybe do something more. When he's at home, he starts checking her social media and sees a very different Elizabeth. She's smiling and having fun with friends in most pictures, and he wants to see her that carefree again. Elizabeth also starts following JJ on social media and stalks him a bit. He's exactly the same in real life, full of life and fun. During breakfast with her father and sister, Elizabeth mentions that he's in the same class as her, much to her father's surprise. He never thought JJ would be able to get into college. Frank is prejudiced, but he has a valid reason for being skeptical of JJ. He has footage of him in his house, helping his friends steal from him. He never mentions anything to Elizabeth, however, so she's clueless. Patricia asks if Elizabeth can invite JJ to her birthday party, and Elizabeth tells her she can. At JJ's house, Patrick comes to talk to him about his friends and that he shouldn't hang out with them. JJ gets angry because Patrick has nothing to do with his life and they don't have that kind of relationship. When JJ tells him to leave him alone, Patrick slaps him on the neck. JJ's shocked and doesn't know how to react. He closes the door in Patrick's face and calls him stupid. The next day in class, Elizabeth is having difficulties following the professor's instructions and ends up arguing with him. JJ goes after her to see if she's alright. He mentions her mother and that it must be hard for her to lose someone like that, and Elizabeth gets angry that he was gossiping about her to their classmates. JJ tries to explain that he only asked because he wanted to know her better, but she storms off. Elizabeth is very temperamental and due to her grief, she tends to lash out. She has no one to talk to about her feelings and bottles them up until she explodes. One of JJ's friends passes away due to violence in the neighborhood and they pay homage to him. It shows that he's also used to losing people close to him, but for a much different reason. When they see each other again in college, they have the assignment to dance without thinking about too much. Elizabeth has difficulties again and can't let go of her insecurities and fear of failure. JJ dances without any worry, and he smiles at her when they make eye contact. After class, he apologizes for bringing her mom up in their conversation and she accepts it. She takes the opportunity to invite him to her sister's birthday and after hesitating a bit, he agrees to go because she promises to stay with him. Birthdays are also a good excuse for them to exchange numbers. JJ buys a gift for Patricia with his own money, and Patrick thinks he stole it. He grabs the gift from JJ and they start arguing. JJ accuses Patrick of being addicted to and not telling his mom, and Patrick grabs him by the neck when he calls him names. JJ tries to escape Patrick, but he's stronger than him and starts beating him up. JJ desperately calls for Sluggo, and he appears with a gun. He threatens Patrick if he doesn't let JJ go. Patrick almost eliminates JJ, but he quickly lets it go when he sees the gun. Sluggo helps JJ and hugs him. JJ is shaking and scared. He almost passed away because of Patrick, and it was thanks to Sluggo that he was still alive. The day of Patricia's party arrives and JJ goes. He meets Elizabeth and she asks him to grab a drink for her. He does as she says, but before he's coming back to her, he sees her with another boy, laughing and touching intimately. He gets sad because he thinks it's her boyfriend and he's very different from him. Blonde, blue-eyed, and rich like Elizabeth. Feeling down, JJ sits alone in the living room with his drink. A man, Frank's friend, approaches him and starts talking to him. They talk about careers and JJ tells him he wants to be an actor. The man laughs and tells him that it's going to be hard for him because he's poor. JJ gets uncomfortable with the way the talk is taking when Elizabeth appears and interrupts them. She asks JJ to go with her to her bedroom and there they can talk without anyone pestering them. JJ tests Elizabeth's headphones and since he can't hear anything, she says she's glad he came. JJ asks about Elizabeth's mom again after seeing a picture of them together, but Elizabeth doesn't say anything about her mother. She isn't willing to open up about her yet, not even to him. Later on, when JJ arrives home, he sees his mother crying because of Patrick. He broke up with her and didn't say why. She wonders if JJ said something to him to make him leave, but he didn't. He doesn't tell her that JJ beat him up and almost eliminated him either. His mother is suffering and she deserves to be comforted. JJ dreams of Elizabeth that night. He wakes to Sluggo asking him to hide a couple of watches he stole because the police are coming to his house. In class, Elizabeth still can't let go of her shyness. JJ tries to help her out and make her relax, but she prefers to watch him dance. He decides to invite her to go watch a play with him, the same one they are reading in class, under the excuse that it might help her overcome her act better. She accepts to go, and they set a date. When she tells her father she's going out, he doesn't let her because he needs her to watch her sister. Elizabeth tries to argue, but he doesn't change his mind. He calls her selfish and spoiled for only thinking about herself, and that she isn't the only one suffering from grief. Without any options, Elizabeth tries calling JJ, but he doesn't answer. He waits at the theater for her until he realizes that he was stood up. Later on, she finally manages to call him and he tells her that he waited. She explains that she couldn't go because of a family emergency, and wonders if he wants to go hang out at her place. He agrees. He's with Sluggo and his other friends. Sluggo invites Elizabeth to go out with them, and she accepts, even though her father told her not to. She leaves her sister sleeping and goes to the other side of town, a place where she had never been before. JJ's friends welcome her with open arms. Elizabeth has more fun than she had in ages, and it relaxes her immensely. JJ is also happy that she's there meeting his friends, people that are important to him. They get along great, and when it is time for Elizabeth to go home, she asks him to take her. On the train, they sit close to each other and share their earphones. She invites him in to swim in the pool, and JJ eagerly accepts. They take off their clothes and swim in their underwear. JJ finally dares to ask who the guy at the party was and if he was her boyfriend. Elizabeth chuckles and informs him that it was her cousin. She finds it cute that JJ is jealous of her even though they aren't in a relationship. Frank suddenly arrives and JJ has to quickly hide. Her father doesn't notice anything out of normal and leaves after saying goodnight to Elizabeth. She tells JJ that he should leave, but before he goes, she kisses him for the first time. It's sweet and ends far too quickly, but it's enough to make JJ's heart jump out of his chest. He's so happy he can barely contain himself. He doesn't even care that he's going home wet in the cold. A few days go by and there's a college party for them to go to. JJ wants to impress Elizabeth since it's going to be their first time together after their first kiss. He decides to borrow one of Sluggo's stolen watches, all to impress Elizabeth. At the party, they have a lot of fun and kiss a couple of times. Elizabeth isn't serious or aloof, she's having fun with everyone and laughing freely. When they are going back home together, a sleek car approaches and Elizabeth thinks it's a good idea to ask for a ride. JJ, used to living in a world filled with violence, knows that it's a bad choice. Two strange men leave the car and approach. They leer at Elizabeth and ignore JJ. His instincts scream at him that something is wrong, and Elizabeth continues talking and telling them where they want to go. One of the men approaches her and says that he may take her with him. Only then does Elizabeth realize that they are in a bad position and the men aren't good. They ask for their cell phones and money, and when they find JJ's watch, he refuses to give it to them. He knows Sluggo is going to be mad if he loses the watch. The men threaten Elizabeth and even slap her. With no other option, JJ hands them the watch. They go away with their stolen things and leave the two of them alone on the road. Elizabeth is angry at JJ because he hesitated in giving them the watch and she was hit. She calls her father and he comes to pick her up. He doesn't offer JJ a ride and orders him to stay away from Elizabeth. At home, Frank lectures Elizabeth and says she's naive for trusting JJ. He thinks the boy is bad news and that she should stop seeing him altogether. Elizabeth refuses to obey her father. She thinks he's prejudiced, but Frank has a reason to not want her to be with JJ. JJ is worried that she's still mad at him for the attack after the party, and he has no idea that Frank has proof that could send him and his friends to jail. He's heartbroken and sad. His mother comforts him and he confesses that he's in love with Elizabeth. It was his first love, and he wanted to be with her. When she refuses to answer his calls, he decides to go to her house to talk to her. He screams her name until Elizabeth appears. She lets him come in because it's pouring rain outside and he's soaking wet. In her room, JJ apologizes for the way she got hit because of him and that the reason he hesitated was that the watch wasn't his. Elizabeth wonders why he borrowed it in the first place and he confesses that he was trying to impress her. He pleads for her forgiveness and says that he's willing to do anything to make their relationship work. The only thing he wants is to be with her. Elizabeth feels sorry for him and decides to give him a chance. She kisses him and helps him take off his clothes. Then, she takes off hers and they get intimate for the first time. After that, their relationship flourishes. They have to hide it because her father forbids her from being with him. But it works. They see each other every day, go out and have fun. It's a great way to take Elizabeth's mind off her grief and slowly she starts moving on with JJ's help. Sluggo is also trying to go out with a girl that already has a boyfriend, and her boyfriend is also involved in some shady business. Elizabeth starts letting go of her insecurity and improves in her classes. One day, when they are chilling out after class, Sluggo calls Elizabeth to talk to JJ. He wants the watches right away. JJ gets nervous because he still hasn't told Sluggo that he lost one of the watches and he knows he's going to be mad. He excuses himself and leaves to meet his best friend. Before he goes to his house and has an unpleasant surprise. Patrick is there with his mother again. To make matters worse, his mother found Sluggo's bag filled with watches, and she wants to ask where he took them from. Patrick's sure he's stealing, but JJ isn't. His mother asks him to apologize to Patrick if he wants the bag back, but JJ refuses. He quickly grabs the bag and tries to run, but Patrick jumps him and tries to choke him. His mother desperately tries to make Patrick let go of him, and when he does, JJ quickly leaves with the bag. His mother tells Patrick to leave and to never come back. Sluggo is bruised after taking a beating from his boss. That's why he's so desperate for the watches. He needs to settle a debt and he needs money. JJ confesses to him that he lost one of his watches and Sluggo loses his mind. The watch JJ lost cost over $200 and there's no way JJ will be able to pay it with his monthly salary. Seeing Sluggo desperate and hurt, JJ has an idea. He knows where they can steal things that are expensive enough for Sluggo to settle his debt. They go to his college and enter through the roof, an entrance that few people knew about. JJ only knew because one of his classmates showed him. They steal sound equipment and leave to deliver it to Sluggo's boss. JJ knows that his life is going to change forever after he stole. It was the first time he did something like that, despite following his friends when they were stealing. It's a nerve-wracking meeting with Sluggo's boss. Thankfully, the sound equipment is enough to replace the watch and Sluggo's score is settled for the time being. The only issue is that they are going to have to lay low to make sure there's no one looking for them. JJ stops going to class and Elizabeth can't reach him. When she hears of the stolen sound equipment and the fact that JJ's missing, she jumps to conclusions. She doesn't want to think the worst of him, but it's too much of a coincidence. Even some of her classmates are suspicious. Her suspicions are confirmed when JJ sends her a voicemail saying that he isn't enough for her, and that she deserves better. She's sad and depressed again because she doesn't understand why he would do something like that. She has never needed money or is in a desperate situation like JJ. Her father sees her sad and decides to finally tell her the truth about JJ. He shows her the footage of JJ and his friends breaking into their house a couple of months before. Elizabeth is shocked that he could do something like that and lie to her face. She trusted him and he has been lying to her the entire time. It feels like a betrayal. Now she knows for sure that he was responsible for stealing the equipment. For that reason, she gives up on him and doesn't try talking to him again. Days later, her professor asks if she knows of JJ's whereabouts. Elizabeth, still sore about JJ's betrayal, and lashes out again. The professor explains that he wants to help JJ, and it's implied that he knows he was the one to steal the equipment. He doesn't want to give up on JJ because he knows he has talent. He only needs someone to give him a hand and take him away from the dark world he was entering. It makes Elizabeth think about the reasons for JJ to steal and if he deserves a second chance or not. JJ is sad and down in the dumps because of Elizabeth. Sluggo comforts him and tells him that everything passes, even pain and suffering. He thinks when JJ returns, they are going to talk and everything will be alright again. While talking to him, Sluggo notices his girlfriend's ex lurking around and confronts him. He threatens the guy and tells him to stay away from his girl, or he wouldn't like the consequences. When Sluggo turns his back, the guy grabs a gun and shoots him point blank. Sluggo passes away immediately. JJ watches it all happen in slow motion. He runs towards Sluggo when he falls limply on the floor. He tries to wake him up and ask for help, but it's too late. JJ watches his best friend, one that helped him a lot as they were growing up, pass away in front of him. It's all too much for JJ. He can't believe Sluggo passed away like that, and no one is doing anything because he wasn't important enough. He's so mad that he decides to take matters into his own hands. His other friend tries to comfort him and change his mind about getting revenge. JJ doesn't listen to him and goes after the guy who eliminated Sluggo. He takes Sluggo's gun and searches for the guy. Meanwhile, his friend desperately calls Elizabeth and explains the situation. JJ finds the man responsible for Sluggo's passing and points the gun at him. Instead of eliminating him, he calls the police. When Elizabeth and his other friend arrive, both boys are arrested. Elizabeth quickly goes after JJ and stops in front of the car, taking him to jail. The officers try to make her leave and let them pass, but she refuses. She ends up being arrested too and is put next to JJ in the back of the car. She smiles at him. He can't believe she did that for him. They have no plans to escape, and Elizabeth's father is going to be furious, but she decided right then that JJ deserved some compassion. He did the right thing in the end and called the police. They kiss and smile at each other for one last time, feeling safe that at least they had each other in that moment of hardship.